Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We're glad you're here, and we're looking forward to what should be a valuable and insightful discussion. My name is Ignacio, and I will be serving as your moderator for today's webinar. I'll be guiding the conversation and making sure we stay on track as we move through the session. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the Q&A chat feature, and we'll get to them after the speakers are finished presenting. If you could please include what team the question is directed towards, we'd appreciate it. So to kick things off, I want to start with a simple question. Why do some law firms seem to scale smoothly while others start to feel more pressure as they grow? What we tend to see is that growth doesn't fix inefficiencies, it exposes them. As more work comes in, attorneys get pulled into intake, billing, coordination, and all the things that sit around the actual legal work. And at a certain point, what should feel like progress starts to feel more like strain. So today's session is really about how high-performing firms avoid that. We're going to take a look at how they structure their technology, their talent, their operation, so work moves more smoothly, attorney time is protected, and growth is actually sustainable. So you'll hear from a few experts who see this firsthand. Anna Solano from Clio will walk through how Clio Work uses AI to move cases forward and reduce time spent on repetitive tasks. Aaron Giglia from Montage Legal will share how firms are using experienced freelance attorneys to handle overflow without committing to full-time hires. And Equivity CEO Aldo Bottoni will break down how firms are structuring operational and paralegal support so attorneys can stay focused on higher value work. The goal here is simple: to show you what's actually working inside firms that are growing without losing efficiency. In our experience, most firms don't struggle because of a lack of demand. The challenge is usually how that work is structured and supported. When technology, staffing, and processes aren't aligned, more work doesn't translate into more revenue. It just creates more pressure. So let's take a quick look at where that pressure is showing up for you. We're going to share a quick poll here. What is currently creating the most operational pressure in your firm? A, administrative workload, billing, intake, scheduling. B, staffing capacity, needing more hands for legal work. C, technology inefficiency, tools not talking to each other. Or D, managing an unpredictable or fluctuating caseload. So we'll give you some time to answer those. Great, that's some really helpful context. So we can see 60% voted for administrative workload, 20% for staffing capacity, and 20% for fluctuating caseload. You can already see how these challenges tie back to how work is flowing through the firm and where things start to slow down. Let's start with technology, specifically how it can take some of that work off your plate. Most firms use their case management systems to store information. Anna from Clio is going to show you how that same information can actually be used to move cases forward.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for the intro, Ignacio. Like Ignacio said, my name is Anna. I'm with the Clio team, and I'm one of the account executives on the customer success, customer sales side. So I'm excited to be with you today and show you a little bit of the tech side of things. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we will hop right to it. Perfect. So today I'm going to be highlighting Clio Work specifically. Clio Work is the AI tool that kind of marries your legal research content library, which in Clio is known as VLEX, and then all of your matter activity in all of Clio Manage. So it's that middle tool between the two where you have the ability to get a holistic AI understanding of what's been going on. So depending on your workflow, what you're looking to do in that day, Clio Work has access to all of it. So it can do a huge overhaul of everything in there. So with that, there's a couple different ways that you can get into Clio Work. The first is just by clicking into the dropdown. You'll find that Clio Work itself will linger throughout the platform to help you keep on top of maybe some activities or AI actions that you're maybe working on or should be working on. But this dashboard here, this is Clio Work. So with that, what I'm able to do is, let's take a family law, for example, and we'll pull up our friend Carmela Soprano. What I'm able to do is tie these research questions and AI requests into this box here. I've actually just copy and pasted for the sake of time. I'll let you read through it. I'll read through it really quickly as well. But it's along the lines of reviewing the soprano matter, identify the facts that best support our client, Carmela's request for temporary custody related relief, child supported spousal maintenance, exclusive occupancy of the marital residence, and interim counsel fees. Prepare as a summary document that clearly sources where the information can be found in the matter, including the file and page number. Then prepare a concise internal hearing memo with the applicable New York standards for pendente light custody, temporary support, exclusive occupancy, the strongest facts of our clients, likely weaknesses or counter arguments, factual gaps we should address before the hearing, and short arguments outlined for court. Please prepare this an internal strategy brief. You probably read that faster than I was able to read that, but just wanted to make sure that if you're not looking at the screen that you're able to hear what we're doing as well. So I've typed this in, attached it to the matter so that the AI knows what to associate this matter to, or what to associate this prompt to. I hit next, and you won't believe your eyes. This is going with Agentic AI and Clio Work. It's going to create a plan for me. So the first thing it's going to do is create plan tasks. The first step in that plan task is identify relevant matter documents and read the key filings and financial materials for the temporary relief issues. You can see right away, I have not uploaded a single document. I haven't added any other information or files or documents or text. It's simply scanning through everything that I have in Clio, including notes, files, emails, all of it. While this is working in the background, I also want to highlight and touch on some of the privacy and confidentiality in Clio. So Clio Work is designed with privacy and confidentiality in mind. Customer data remains your data, and Clio does not use your firm's conversations, confidential work, or uploaded documents to train AI models. AI activity stays within Clio's secure, compliant environment, and Clio uses enterprise agreements with AI partners that include zero data retention configurations to disallow storage, indexing, or retention of conversations outside these approved environments. Pardon me. Clio Work is built on infrastructure aligned with SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, GDPR, and HIPAA standards, so firms can use AI features with helping protect sensitive client information. So just wanted to have that. That's at the top priority for legal professionals, so I always like to have that in. As I was reading that, you can see it's actually working through some of the other steps. You can actually leave this screen and work on other workflows, and I'll go back and give you kind of like a high level overview, but I wanted to jump into this so that you could really get an idea of how powerful this AI tool is. We're reaching the last step here of drafting a structured factual summary document, so we probably have some information that I can scroll down to. These are some of the documents that it's retrieving from our library. And if you have any questions while this is loading, we have my manager and previously the head of sales of VLEX, which is what Clio recently acquired at the end of 2025, on the call. So feel free to drop any questions that you might have. He's on standby to answer those. Let's see how quickly it's going to. All right. I guess while that's still working, let me jump back into the actual dashboard of Clio work. So what I walked through was inputting a prompt, just like you're used to with any like agentic AI into this. I inputted it into this box. I selected a matter so that I know I can come back to this and for like a historical or reference. But within this screen, there's actually built out workflows that the product team has created. So within these workflows, you can select ask a research question, analyze contracts. There's even redlining of redline analysis, compare documents, chronologies. That's going to be really important, of course, for your family and PI practice areas. So creating timelines. And again, you don't need to upload any documents. It's already in there, as well as something that's a fun fact is you also can analyze judicial proceedings. This is really just transcribing video and audio to text. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an actual judicial proceeding. Let me pop back. Okay, so now it's come out with some information. I'll just make this a little larger. So it's prepared both documents in the Matter workspace, these two here, and I'll show that at the bottom, but a few notes. So it's highlighting a couple key details that it's captured in its summary, as well as it's created a plan, because it is agentic AI, of what we might be looking to do next. Built into Clio Work, you've got Legal Pad that you can do editing, and drafting right inside of here. So I can edit this on the spot. And this is what it's come up with. In addition, I can also save this back to Clio Manage. I can save this into Word doc and continue editing. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, I think I'm still good for time. I'm going to quickly show also a PI workflow. And in this case, let's do a walkthrough for a paralegal or perhaps like a case manager. So again, my workflow is I select the matter that this is associated with. We will do Mr. Brody. He is clumsy and he did a slip and fall. I copy and paste my prompt. This one here says review the medical records, orthopedic records, physical therapy notes, wage loss verification, and medical bills ledger in Martin Brody's matter. Create an organized damages summary showing treatment by date, provider, diagnosis, charges, wage loss, and any ongoing complaints or limitations. Also, identify any treatment gaps, missing records, billing issues, or inconsistencies that should be addressed before we update the demand package or prepare for mediation. So I can go ahead. Let's switch this to California this time for fun. Just an FYI, whatever the state this case is set in, the system will know that that's what you're looking for. I'm just manually switching it to California. And here we go. Again, I'll just make this a tad smaller. And this is what it's working through. Again, provides me with the checklist, working through it, shows me what it's actually doing. So currently it's reviewing the treatment records. Oh, just kidding. It is now reviewing wage loss and verification and medical bill records. And then it's also showing me what documents that it's going through. While this one is loading, I have another blurb here. So we will go into more research questions in just a moment. I've kind of just showed you asking, oh, it's already done, but okay, I'll get excited about AI sometimes and then I bounce all over the place, but we'll stick with this workflow. So within here, the output, we've got damages summary for Martin Brody. Let's make this a little larger. I know for my sake, I need it a little larger. Damages for Martin Brody based on the current records. I'll let you read that. You're probably a faster reader than I can out loud. And then it's also created a table. So you can download this. I usually show this point to PI firms and they are blown away. So I'm hoping that you have the same reaction, but I'd love to hear, like in your questions, like I said, Nikki's on the side. So if you have any questions specific to your practice area or about this table, please let us know. And then I can scroll down and current economic damages. It's pulled this. Again, I haven't had to upload a single document. Sometimes I hear attorneys or legal professionals say like, yes, I'm using another AI tool, but I have to remove like the client sensitive data, like name and all this information. And as we all know, AI works best when you have a lot of context. So missing that can really, really, have your hands tied behind your back when trying to use AI and trying to insert that information back in. There's a lot to read through. So if you want to do like a more in-depth demo, I'm sure there will be an opportunity for you to reach out to the Clio team and then someone can give you a more in-depth demo. But lastly, we will go into ask a research question. So for this question, I would actually love to take it from the we have a chat, is that right? The chat, if there's any questions research questions that you typically ask, or you're typically working through, maybe it's a matter that you're currently working on, any research questions, I'd love to take one from the crowd just to get like a crowd reaction. If anyone has any on standby, not to put you all on the spot, but if there's any research questions, I'll maybe wait a little bit.
And feel free to drop that in the Q&A chat so that Anna can add it into Clio.
April Fools, it looks like we don't have one, so let me type one in myself. Oopsie daisy. Let's do a research question, and then I'll type it in. So identify and list the primary statutory type. It's always when someone is watching you. Best interests of the child. Factors applied by California in custody disputes. Right? Kind of perfect. Oh, and of course there's examples below, but we'll use my prompt here. And the reason I wanted to use my prompt actually is when I type a prompt in for a research question, ClearWorks actually going to suggest that there might be a better way to ask this question. And the reason it does this is actually for the rating scale within ClearWork. So in combination with, like, as this is loading, CERT is actually CleoWorks Citator. So if you're like familiar with shepherdizing or key cite style citation checking, this is the equivalent concept in CleoWork. So alongside that, there's also going to be a rating based on the question that I've typed in, how closely related it is. So this one's actually a pretty strong connection. And as this is loading, you can see that it's actually already providing me with some cases. And so if I'd like to, I can actually click into the actual case. It will pull me out into the VLEX library. You actually always have access to the VLEX library from CleoWork, but you don't necessarily need to go in there unless you're doing more traditional searches. Excuse me. But with AI, why would we do that, right? So if I click into that, this is what you see, and you can actually highlight, note, copy with citation, easy peasy. And we'll just let this load, and then this will be the last thing that I show you, I believe. Ignacio, have I gone over? Do I still have a little bit more time? How am I doing?
We're right on time. So yeah, if feel free to wrap this up and then we will move along.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we're just waiting for one last output. So it's got the short response and then the full summary, as well as, like I said, hyperlinking into those cases to make it easier to actually verify for yourself. It actually breaks it down into categories as well. So background and relevant law. Still working. And at the end, you'll have your conclusion. Their material. And like I said, all of the categories and resources that are pulled on the right. And exceptions and caveats, I guess. It's long, but if you imagine how long it's taking you currently to potentially manually search this information, going through advanced searches, Boolean searches, like I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's pretty cool. And then the conclusion. And all of this can be saved directly into Clio Manage. You can download this information, copy and paste it just like you're used to, or even send it in an email if, let's say, you're working with someone outside of the firm and you need to send them some information. But that is it. There's a lot more that Clio work can do. So yeah, if it's something that you're interested in taking a look at, I'm sure there's a way to contact Clio. But I appreciate you giving me the floor and the time today. I'll pass the mic back over to Ignacio, and that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, that's a great tool. Thank you for showing us Clio work and the AI functions. That's definitely a tool that can take the lift out of the day-to-day work. But of course, technology alone doesn't replace the need for experienced legal talent. And the challenge is how to scale that expertise without adding fixed overhead, especially when workloads fluctuate. This is loading in. Wait for the slides to load in, but next, Aaron from Montage Legal will walk through how firms are bringing in experienced freelance attorneys to handle peaks in demand without long-term commitments. The floor is yours, Aaron.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today about how firms have been bringing in experienced freelance attorneys to help with their staffing needs during times when they're really busy or when they're focused on high-level strategy, doing business development, and all kinds of other reasons, like maybe they want to go on vacation, or they're having trouble hiring someone full-time, or all kinds of other reasons. So Montage Legal Group has been around for 17 years. Lori's my business partner. She and I have been, we were attorneys at a couple of big firms before we quit, and we started this, intended for lawyers who are looking for really high-level substantive work, but on their own schedules. So not a traditional model. And law firms have been utilizing that talent in all kinds of different ways ever since. So who hires freelance lawyers? Mostly it's busy law firms. As you know, time is our most finite resource. There's only so much of it. We can't make more. So no matter what you do, no matter how many cool tools you have, time is still going to be the limiting factor for almost everything. And that's how lawyers make money. We make our money by billing time. So when a firm is busy, they need extra help, they might think about hiring a freelance lawyer. Other types of situations where a firm might bring in a freelance lawyer are firms that are trying to grow. firms that are trying to retain clients, firms that are trying to give their clients like very high level customer service, turn things around quickly, making sure that their matters are getting the attention that they deserve. And then also firms that are frustrated with hiring. We have seen over the last many years a very steady decrease in the amount of law students that are actually attending law school. And so there are fewer lawyers that are coming out. This has been a problem. Right now, it's really affecting the mid-level lateral hires. A lot of the big firms are taking from the mid-sized firms, that are taking from the small firms, that are taking from, everywhere. And the way that firms are hiring law students these days is a very, very big difference than how we were recruited after we had gone through our first year grades and everyone knew that we were good law students and we're going to potentially be good lawyers. Now they're coming in and they're taking law students in their first year before they have ever taken even one single law school final. So it's a really different model, and it affects the small firms the most, because when small firms need help, there are just fewer and fewer resources that they can turn to. And so firms are really struggling to hire, and that's when they might come to us or to freelance lawyers in general. Montage freelance attorneys, we happen to be very like top credentialed lawyers. We have the big firm experience, the law firm and academic credentials that firms would want to hire if they had the ability to do so. And then, like I mentioned, we tend to be the lawyers that have decided to step back from a traditional model. So a lot of the time it's women with kids who decided not to work 80 hours a week anymore. A lot of the time it might be some other reason. So a lawyer that's relocated abroad and there's only so much cool things you can do in Spain or France, and now you want to do legal work again. Or like law school professors or entrepreneurs or other types of folks like that. So firms come to us to hire freelance lawyers because they might have a growing backlog, that to-do list that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Firms that are really concerned about having to turn away work. They're getting good work and they're having to turn it away because they don't have the ability to continue to service their clients in the manner that they feel like is what the client deserves. Like I mentioned, firms struggling to hire, firms that have associates currently who are overworked and they're afraid that they're going to quit if they don't get them some help. If a firm needs specialty expertise, they might bring in a freelance lawyer to help with a real estate thing on a corporate deal or a tax issue or something like that. Firms that are really wanting to focus more on high-level business development. And as you know, when you're only one person, you can't do two things at once. You can't develop business and write a brief. You can't go to a networking event and draft a contract at the same time. Those things are not, it's impossible to do that. And so for the firms that are really trying to grow their networking and client base and need someone to actually do the drafting, that's a good opportunity to bring in an experienced freelance lawyer. Okay, so moving to the next slide. There we go. With Montage specifically, how it works is it's pretty streamlined. A firm will call or email us or submit something on our website that just says, hey, I need help with anything, literally anything. I need someone to draft this motion for summary judgment and I need it by, May 15th and it should take 25 hours. Okay. And so, or it could be, I need someone to help with commercial contract drafting stuff at 10 hours a week for the foreseeable future. Whatever it is, just tell us. And then we'll, at that point, we reach out to the group. The people, we have about 500 freelance lawyers that we work with nationwide. Like I mentioned, they all are cherry picked out of about 25,000 resumes that we've received. And so we ask them if they're interested in assisting with that particular work, whether it be the, short-term or long-term project that the firm might need. They volunteer, they say they're interested, they give us their rate, and then we present that information to the firm. The firm takes a look at it. It includes it's just an email. It includes some very basic information about each person, their background. We attach attorney profiles so that you can read a little bit more about their substantive experience. It's only one page because we work with 100% busy lawyers and no one has time to read 12 4-page CVs. So it's one page. And then if you have additional questions, you can always come back to us and ask. And then the firm chooses someone. And once the contract's in place, then the work begins. All the substantive work is between the firm and the freelance lawyer. Montage is not set up like a law firm, so we won't have any access to any client information, communications, or documents. That's all between the firm and the freelance attorney. However, they choose to communicate with each other, whether it's some workflow or Slack or email or call or Zoom meetings or whatever it might be. And then at that point, we're just here for you. We handle all of the invoicing, collection. We do all that for you. If there's any questions that come up, then we're always here to assist. So if the firm needs someone in addition to the original person because now they're at capacity and don't have additional time, or they need someone different or in addition to, then the firm comes to us and we say, great, no problem. We've set up teams before, and firms have worked with anywhere from one freelance lawyer to, I mean, over the course of many, many years, like over a decade, then it might be like north of 50 different freelance lawyers. We've seen that happen, and like not 50 at a time usually, but it might be, there might be a time where there's a team of 5 doing document review, or you might have like a couple of different complex matters that are happening and they need additional help, and then we step in. Okay, next slide. However we move forward, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk about when a firm wants to work with a freelance lawyer, what are the best practices. The most important advice I can give is to proceed cautiously. This is your critically important client work. There is nothing, absolutely nothing more important to your firm than your work. So you don't want to just willy-nilly give it to anyone to do. Even if you get the most glorious resume you've ever imagined, it still doesn't mean that person is going to be a good fit for you and your firm. So give one small thing. Give a small thing. Get some work product back. Make sure you like it. Make sure you like the person doing it. And if so, great. Go for it. Give a lot of things. It's amazing once you find that person, but a lot of times people will see this like glorious resume and think that they found the magical unicorn that's going to solve all their problems. Okay, I mean, maybe that's true, and that is true a lot, but sometimes it's not. So you don't want to get in a situation where you bring in the wrong person, because that makes your life worse, not better. Be realistic. So a lot of times firms really struggle with, they feel like they have to advocate for their client. And so they don't want someone to spend like a reasonable amount of time or like a realistic amount of time on something. And that gets people into a lot of trouble, because then if you expect someone to do like 20 hours of work in 5 hours, you will very quickly find yourself without anyone willing to help you, because no one wants to do that. It's really important to communicate. This is probably number 2, besides proceed with caution. Communicate. Super important. Time expectations. If you think something should take no more than 10 hours, say that, because otherwise don't expect someone to read your mind. When do you need it completed, or when do you want it completed? That is very important information. Please, please never say to someone, there is no deadline on this, because now what you have done is you have taken it from the bottom of your pile and you have put it on the bottom of someone else's. And if in your head you think to yourself, wow, I'd really like this in a week, then the words "this has no deadline" it's the worst thing you can say. Don't say that. The other worst thing you can say is, take all the time you need on this. No, that's not true. No one can bill their client an infinite number of hours on anything. So don't tell someone take all the time you need, because then they're going to, and it can take so much time. Be polite, give things that you hate doing. know and understand the ethical rules. There's a lot of articles that we've written about this. Communicate about future anticipated work, and when something falls through, let them know. So that way they can make, different plans. Okay, I think this is the last slide coming up. All right. The main thing here is freelance lawyers are a foundational part of so many legal practices these days. No one can do anything at once. Or everything at once. It's best to focus on high level and have other folks doing the drafting. This is your critically important work, so you really want to bring in good people that you can be proud of them and their work. This is how businesses work, right? You increase your profitability. There's very little overhead with a freelance lawyer. You can access that specialized expertise, reduce stress, work-life balance. I have literally people's spouses that call and email me saying, hey, I haven't seen my spouse in like 2 months. Can you please have someone come and help? And don't get divorced because you're working all the time. So just kidding. But it's a really great way to increase your client service and to also bring in a little bit more balance into your life, working with a freelance lawyer who's like really committed to helping you. And I think that's it. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Erin, for sharing, giving us a little bit of background on yourself and Montage, and also how to get the most out of using Montage. So now we've seen how firms are expanding attorney capacity in a more flexible way, but even with the right technology and legal talent in place, things can still slow down if the operational side isn't structured well. This is where a lot of day-to-day friction shows up: intake, billing, coordination, and all the work that surrounds the legal work itself. So let me go ahead and share our slides here so that Aldo from Equivity will walk us through how firms are structuring operational and paralegal support to handle intake, billing, and administrative work so attorneys can stay focused on higher value work.
Thanks, Ignacio. I want to start with something we see across almost every growing law firm. Your work doesn't come in evenly. Some weeks you're slammed, other weeks you're lighter. Intake fluctuates, cases come at different times, and everything moves in waves. Most firms are built as if work is steady. So when work comes in, things start to get overloaded. And when it slows down, you're left paying for capacity you're not using. So I'll walk you through today is a little bit of how that mismatch affects billable time, revenue, and growth, and how some of the high-performing firms solve it without overhiring. The first place that mismatch happens is in capacity. Across many firms we work with, you're not short on work. You're short of usable time, the time that actually turns into billable work, and that's where structure really matters. A big part of the attorney's day gets pulled into non-billable work like intake, follow-up, scheduling, coordination. So even when demand is there, only part of it turns into billable work. And that's a real limitation, not demand itself, but the firm's ability to convert that demand into billable time. On average, an attorney bills about 2.9 hours a day, around 37% utilization. At a $300 hourly rate, in average, that's about $1,500 per day, or over $30,000 per month in unrealized billable time. The rest of that time doesn't disappear. It just gets pulled into admin, coordination, and lower valuable work. At a certain point, you're functioning as the most expensive assistant in your law firm. So the limit we just talked about isn't like just a theory. It shows up in lost revenue every single day and how your day pretty much unfolds. A typical day probably starts something like this, or it's something like this. Review discovery late at night because there wasn't time during the day. Following up an intake first thing in the morning. Spending the day jumping between calls, emails, deadlines, and case management. In between, you're chasing invoices, and handling tasks that don't have a clear owner in your law firm. By the end of the day, you're pretty much exhausted. You're probably pulling in 16 hours a day, and the work that actually drives our firm forward isn't still done because your time has been pulled into admin tasks and little tasks that shouldn't sit with you in the first place. And this is where most firms make the same move. They go and they hire, but hiring full-time in-house staff only works when the workload is steady and legal work isn't. Demand shifts constantly week to week or even day to day. So the firms end up adding fixed overhead to a workload that isn't consistent, which creates new limitations instead of solving the real problem. We see this happen all the time. So let me show you a couple of examples on how we put this into practice at Equivity. We worked with a firm that had a steady stream of cases, but their workload came in waves. Some weeks they needed help, other weeks not as much. Not enough to justify a full-time hire, so they handled the work themselves. At first, they kept up, deadlines got tighter, turnaround slowed, and then the team was stretched very thin. After reviewing their workflow, we recommended a mix of virtual paralegals and intake support to match those fluctuations. Once they brought the support in, deadlines stabilized a little bit, turnaround improved, and the workload became manageable again. Same workload, but now they could handle it without overextending or adding full-time overhead. Hiring in-house wouldn't have solved this issue. The workload wasn't consistent enough to justify a full-time role, and they would have been either underutilizing the hire or shifted them towards lower value work just to keep them busy. What they needed wasn't more headcount, it was scalability. So then if you go and decide to hire in-house, there's another issue that doesn't get talked much. Hiring takes time, interviewing, onboarding, training. This puts attorneys away from the billable work, which creates capacity. Even when someone is in place, there's ongoing management, answering questions, reviewing work, dealing with turnover. So beyond the salary costs, there are hiring costs that you should take into consideration. And the reality is you're committing to a full-time cost for work that isn't consistently full-time, while still pulling attorneys away from billable work to manage, train, and support that new hire. At this point, the pressure becomes even more clear. Demand fluctuates, but your staffing model doesn't. Hiring adds fixed capacity, but your workload isn't fixed. That's a mismatch. And this becomes a structural decision point. Do you hire or do you take on fixed overhead for work that doesn't or may fluctuate? Or do you find a way to make capacity match demand? Because once you hire, that cost doesn't adjust when the workload doesn't. This is why most firms are shifting towards flexible support models that can scale with demand instead of locking them into. What high-performing firms have learned is this. They stop trying to do everything themselves and they stop defaulting to full-time hires when their workload doesn't support it. Instead, they build a structure where attorneys focus on high legal work, paralegals focus on drafting, discovery, and case support. Much of this can be built properly, and increasing total billable time. Operational teams handle intake, client communications, billing, scheduling, and call management. And where full-time support doesn't make sense, they use virtual support that can scale up or down as needed. In this structure, work flows to the most efficient, highest capacity level. That's what allows capacity to match how the work actually comes in. To make this structure really work through, the support must be specialized, not just general support, but professionals who already understand the role. Virtual paralegals with expertise in practice areas, working as W-2 employees, not 1099 contractors, so they're part of a consistent managed team. Legal executive assistants who can manage coordination without constant direction. Experienced intake specialists who can respond quickly and consistently. Because when support is too general, attorneys still have to manage it. When it's too specialized, it removes work from their plate. That's what drives speed, consistency, and accuracy. Here's what the structure looks into practice. We worked with a law firm that had no shortage of leads. Phones were ringing, consultations were being scheduled, cases were coming in, but things were slipping. Follow-ups were inconsistent, work wasn't moving as smoothly as it should, and attorneys were getting pulled into coordination instead of billable work. When we looked closer, the issue wasn't one gap. It showed across the whole workflow of the law firm. Intake, case support, and billing were all breaking down in different ways, and none of them had enough volume individually to justify a full-time hire. So we addressed it in stages. We started at the beginning of the workflow with virtual intake and call management. Response times improved, and more consultations were converted. Then we moved into the middle of the workflow with virtual paralegal support. Cases moved faster and work became more consistent. Finally, we addressed the end of the workflow with billing support, making invoicing and collections more consistent and predictable. And most importantly, attorneys focus in the billable work. And this is a good example of what we see across many, many firms. The problem isn't one gap. It's the structure of the whole workflow. One of the biggest shifts high-performing firms make is this: they stop thinking about growth and setting just headcount and start thinking about how the entire workflow can be supported. Because the workflow starts with intake, move through case management and execution, and ends with billing and collections. When only part of the workflow is supported, work gets stuck in the gaps and attorneys get pulled in to cover them. When the workflow is supported, cases move consistently, and revenue gets captured more reliably. And this is where the structure unlocks. More available time, faster case movement, less operational stress, more predictable growth, and more revenue without adding a full-time headcount, because capacity expands only when there's an actual need. When you take a step back, this isn't a demand problem. Most firms have demand. It's a structural problem. If your work comes in waves and you try to solve it with a full-time hire, it doesn't work because your team can't scale with the workload. When things get busy, you fall behind. Time lets slip and quality drops. When things slow down, people sit idle and revenue gets left on the table. The firms that solve this just don't work harder or hire more. They build flexible capacity and support the entire workflow, from intake all the way through billing. So nothing gets stuck, nothing gets missed. So the real question here that we should all ask ourselves is, where is time being lost in my firm? Where is work getting stuck? Where is revenue not being captured? And where is capacity breaking down? So if you want a clear answer to this, we're offering a 50-minute workflow audit at the end after the session, where we can show you where capacity is really breaking down and where a few target changes can create the biggest impact, what we like to call the low-hanging fruit. Once you see those gaps, clearly, it becomes much easier what you have to decide within your workflow. That's it for now. Thank you, and I'll hand this back to Ignacio. And there's time at the end, so you can have if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Aldo.
I'm good with time, I think.
Yeah, right on time. Great. Well, I want to thank our three speakers, Anna from Clio, Aaron from Montage, and Aldo from Equivity for the great presentations. What you've seen today are three pieces of the same puzzle: technology, legal capacity, and operational support. And when you look at them together, the common thread is pretty clear. The firms that scale well are the ones that are intentional about how work moves through the firm. They're not just adding more, they're structuring things in a way that actually support growth. We'll now open it up for some questions. We have about 10 minutes. So we'll open it up for some questions for our presenters and their colleagues as well. Feel free to drop it in the Q&A chat. I think we had some throughout the presentation. Great. Nikki from Clio, I know you answered it, but Valerie did ask earlier on that what are some of the features that users tend to ignore but could bring them the most value in Clio work?
Yeah, so I did specifically speak about the legal pad. That's a very useful tool to make changes to the generated output, whether it's a letter, whether it's a motion, or whatever it may be. Not only can you actually go into the legal pad and type it in yourself, like make the changes, but you could actually use natural language to describe the changes that you want made by the tool. So it really provides you with the flexibility of determining how you want to make these changes. Clio work also is matter context aware. So there's no other tool right now on the market that can read through all your documents within your matter and really understand the full picture and get all the context needed to do tailored research and then provide you with customized output based on the information that is within that matter. We obviously, depending on the practice area, there's a lot of different tools that sometimes could be potentially underutilized. And one of them is, for example, analyzing a deposition, that you could easily compare different depositions. You can match the testimony to any claims that are made within a complaint. So it's a very expansive as a whole, and sometimes people tend to underutilize it a little bit. So that was another example. And then probably the most powerful one that I can think of right now that might be a little underutilized is the tabular review, where you could essentially use column Vincent tables and extract all the relevant information from a large collection of documents. It could be 1,000 documents, it could be 10,000 documents, it doesn't matter. And you could be extracting information in terms of, even if it's medical records, right? You could extract anything that you want from those medical records, analyze them, look for any type of, whether it's dependencies or inconsistencies and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very powerful tool. You just have to really, get sometimes creative about how you want to use it.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. We also have another question for the Clio team. What are the biggest operational mistakes firms make when trying to layer AI into their existing systems?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you really have to essentially sit down as a firm and think about what does your tech stack, what does our tech stack look like right now? What are we trying to achieve? Generally, what I recommend is looking at it dividing it from a business of law point of view and practice of law point of view. Like, what kind of potential holes we need to fill on the business law side of things, for example, from a practice management perspective, and what can we do to improve our practice of law workflow. So, for example, if we look at the practice of law, legal research versus document analysis, right? Or litigation versus transactional, depending on the practice area. And think about, is it a question of saving time? Do we want to get rid of some specific administrative burdens? Are we trying to improve the quality of the output that we're currently delivering? And how do we think about it from a billing perspective, right? I think that's also very important. And you have to think about security consistently, if not probably the most important thing. So whenever you're evaluating tools, you have to make sure that they have enterprise grade security, that, at least a recognized brand, right? So I think that's important. And this is not a process that, takes a day. So you should sit down, speak to someone who understands the realm or the domain, and then really ask specific questions to your workflows and to what your ultimate goal is, whether it's maintaining the reputation of your firm, or, maintaining the reputation of the firm is probably like a default, but also, are you trying to grow? And can this tool actually scale together with you?
Awesome.
Yeah, you
Thank
said
you
it
very much.
perfectly. I couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah, and I see there's another question here at the very end. Where are you seeing firms get the most immediate ROI from AI today? Client intake, drafting, billing, or something else? It really depends on what you already have available from a tool perspective. From a like the business of law side of things that you are doing purely because it's part of the business, like let's say client intake. Obviously, we have a tool called Clio Grow, which was designed for that, to not only help you with the intake forms, but also help you even with some marketing tools. So that is growing the actual business as the firm as a business, right? But there's a lot of ROI, which is seen literally on day one on the actual practice of law, right? Where you're doing whether legal research or document analysis, and you are generating some kind of output for your client, for the opposing counsel, for the judge, and so on and so forth. So anything that you specifically, if depending on how you build, like this is very important, because if you are on a flat contingency fee basis, then you are incentivized to get things done faster, better, and so on, right? If you are billing per hour, then you have to think about what do you currently have going on, and can you actually, the time that you save, can you actually allocate that to grow your business? But one thing that I would always advise you to think about is there's firms that come to us and they say, well, you're saving us a lot of time, but that means that we're not billing for that time. And this is a fair concern until you realize that A, you could utilize that time to grow your business, and B, if you don't actually adapt to the specific tools, your competition is actually doing that simultaneously. And if you're not providing output that is better and quicker to your clients, guess what they're going to do? They're probably going to go to a firm that does that for them. So the question becomes, what's more important for you? Is it to adapt and choose a tool that actually fits your, works around your needs? Or do you want to just keep doing what you're doing up until now, probably still get fairly decent results, but then eventually risk that those clients go somewhere else? So things to think about.
Thank you. We actually have a question for Aaron and Montage as well. How are you vetting your attorneys before you bring them on board?
So we have minimum criteria, which is 5 years full-time at a law firm, minimum 3 years with any single legal employer. So just because someone went to the best law school in the country and worked with the best 5 firms, if it was 1 year each for those firms, then they are not a part of Montage. In addition to that, so I review every single resume with my own eyes, go through and decline the ones that don't fit what our model requires. And then for the ones that do look like they'd be a good fit for our law firm clients, then we put them through what we consider to be kind of a series of soft skills tests. So, things like responsiveness, ability to follow directions, those types of basic things that you wouldn't think would be disqualifying, but in fact are very disqualifying in many instances. So those folks are not a part of Montage if they're not responsive or don't follow directions. And then in addition to that, I talk to every single person. We interview every single person who we think might be a good fit for us. And then we do things like try to make sure that they actually want to be doing freelance work for the long term. They're not like they didn't get laid off and they're looking for a full-time job and they're doing this for the next few months until they find something. Mainly because when law firms bring in freelance help, they do so with the intention of having it be an ongoing relationship. That's what is the most efficient in law. Once someone gains institutional knowledge of a matter, then it just makes sense to give them additional work on that matter. That being said, it is absolutely impossible for me or anyone to guarantee that anyone is going to be around for any duration of time. Unfortunately, because that's just not how humanity works. We have to, make allowances for the fact that we're humans and people are going to make decisions and what have you. But we really do the best we can to try to make sure that we're bringing folks in that are going to be around for a while. And they, like I said, they meet our minimum criteria. But as far as vetting for substantive expertise or quality or anything like that, that is something that is almost impossible to do because law is so style and personality driven. And that's why I indicated that it's really important to proceed cautiously because just because 1,000 other lawyers thought that this was the best freelance lawyer that they've ever encountered or imagined, it doesn't mean you're going to agree. So you've got to just, go slow and make sure it's a good fit for you. Vet yourself in addition to our vetting.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. And then very quickly, we have time for a quick response from Equivity. Someone asked, how long does it typically take Equivity to match an attorney with a paralegal?
Sure. For quick projects, we can often find a paralegal very quickly, like within an hour, if you're looking for something urgent. Depending on the level of detail and sophistication needed, we can usually find somebody within 24 to 48 hours.
Awesome. Great. Well, we are running out of time, but I want to thank, first everyone for joining the webinar. Thank you for coming. We hope that you found it insightful. Thank you to Anna, Aaron, and Aldo for taking the time to speak today and speak about Clio, Montage, and Equivity. If you'd like to continue the conversation, we'll send out the recording shortly after the session. And if anything comes up afterwards, feel free to reach out to any of us. Again, thank you for joining, and we hope you have a great rest of your week. All right, take care, everyone.